Looking on it, Doug, and there's nothing on here about why we couldn't go ahead and broadcast that over the thing. So we will look at this. I have not looked at it before. Normally I would do something like that, but at this, why just got it the other day and haven't had the opportunity. Plus, I trust the source of it, that there's nothing going to be said that I would necessarily want you to hold your ears over. But it's about, there's two DVDs. I'm not sure how long it is. I was looking on here. Usually they tell you how long things are, but it doesn't say. So we'll see whether we can get them both in this evening or whether we'll just be able to do the one. Okay, so we'll be looking at the video at this time.
Welcome to the Issachar Report, a Walk Through Time ministry production with our host and Bible teacher, Dr. Charles Hiltebittle. We pray this teaching session will be a help and provide encouragement to you in these end times. Now, let's join in as Dr. Hiltebittle opens the Bible for another teaching session.
Well, thank you for joining us today in the session that we're going to do two sessions on concerning the present situation with the COVID-19 and the lockdowns and all the things that's taking place, not just in America, but all over the world. And we're titling this Pandemic, Pandemonium, or is it a plan? And we've broken it down into two parts because we don't want it to be too long. But we wanted to get enough information. I've been studying this now for 5 weeks at least, collecting material and data, so that when I did this, that I would have a little better knowledge about not only the COVID-19 situation, but where it was going and what it would do. And now that we're into about 6 weeks of this, I think I have a pretty good idea of what it's all about and what it's leading to. And so the information that I'll share is just too long for one session like this. So this is part one. And I want to read a scripture for us to begin with. And out of Luke chapter number 21, and beginning in verse number 8, there the Bible says, and he said, "Take heed that you be not deceived, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and the time draweth near. Go ye not therefore after them." Now this is Jesus' response to them asking three questions that they had asked. And so he says, one of their questions is this, when is the end of the time? And he said, but know that when they say Christ is here, don't understand these things are drawing to the end, but don't go after that. Now notice in verse 9, "And when ye shall hear wars and commotions, be not terrified, for these things must first come to pass. But the end is not by and by." Now notice it changes a little in verse 10. "Then said he unto them, Nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and great earthquakes shall be in divers places, and famines, and pestilences, and fearful sights, and great signs there shall there be from heaven." And so he gave 5 things that are signs that we would call birth pains. And the question we want to ask ourselves in these two sessions is simply this: is someone pulling the strings? Somebody behind the scene. And we know that the master behind it all, of course, is the unseen world, a spiritual warfare. But that warfare ends up fleshed out into humanity and into the world. And so we want to examine some things together concerning this pestilence. The Lord said one of the signs of the end times would be the pestilence, and it does appear that also the Lord is using the analogy of the birth pains process. So it's an incremental increasing. And so we're seeing the pestilence now that we're dealing with all over the world. And the question is, though, is this a diabolical plot? All kinds of conspiracy theories, you'll find it and hear it all over the internet. And some of them, no doubt, have some very valid points. And there should be more questions raised than we're getting actual answers to. And the idea is this. Did this coronavirus that we're dealing with now, did it evolve on its own? Did it come from a bat species? And then from there it mutated over into another animal. They have a specific one they've called out they think is the animal. And then during the lifetime in that animal, it mutated and was able to enter into the human. Or then the question might be asked, is it bioterrorism? Because science would tell us, just basic laws of science would tell us that this evolving would not work, because nothing evolves to a greater expanse. It always devolves according to the second law of thermodynamics. And so that begs the question, how did this become what it is in our world today? And we're going to attempt to try to answer that in this first session, and then look at a little deeper questions in the second. The chart that we're looking at the moment shows major pandemics. And by the way, I just want to say up front right now, this is by no means a pandemic. This is not a pandemic, does not even begin to meet the scientific criteria of a pandemic. This is a media pandemic. This is a political pandemic, but by no means is it a virus or a science pandemic. But the chart shows some of the past, the bubonic plague, one of the greatest all times, 200 million people. And by the way, this is where you get the saying that you hear all the time, somebody was born with a silver spoon in their mouth. And we equate that with the fact that they were born into a family that had some great possessions or wealth. But in reality, it came out of the bubonic plague because the aristocrats were not the ones dying from it, because they drank their wine in silver pitchers, and they ate on silver platters, and they ate with silver utensils. And silver is the most natural purifier on planet Earth. And so therefore, they did not come down with it like the peasantry. And therefore, that's where that old saying, born with a silver spoon, came from. And you'll notice down through the time, various different ones. Down at the very bottom of the chart, I know you're looking at that, but if you turn back and look with me here where I'm sitting, you'll see here's COVID all the way down here at the bottom, 6.4 thousand. Now this is about 3 weeks old, this chart, but here it is down here. It's not even hardly recognizable in scope to what had taken place. Now let me show you another chart of a very similar one. And again, as you look at this one, you see that down at the very bottom is COVID-19. You need to understand that it's called a virus, and it's more of a germ than just a virus. And the transmission of it is by no means what we have been told that it is. We're told to put mask on. Well, let me ask you a question. You got a mask on, and you take it off, and you take your mask off, and then you touch your face. What good did the mask do you? By the way, if it's airborne, unless you've got the right level of a mask, it would not have done you any good anyway, but it's not. And you say, well, we wear our rubber gloves, our plastic gloves. Okay. And it picks up everything. The doctors don't wear those plastic gloves in surgery because they're trying to not infect you, but so that they won't get infected. And you say, so how do they take them off? They have a procedure to take them off. So most people, they just pull them off, not realizing that everything that has been touched and that cloth or that glove has touched, if it had it on it, it is transferred by it. All of these are means trying to scare folks so that they will become acclimated to doing and living and behaving as they're told. This is nothing but the SARS that has been enhanced. It cannot enhance itself. The virus cannot mutate itself. And with the SARS having been manipulated, is now capable of grabbing hold of the human cell structure 20 times greater than the SARS could. So that tells me somebody messed with it, not nature. And so let me give you some facts to think about. This is from a medical doctor, practiced 35 years. He's also a preacher, and he has put together some information that is very important. This is after the first 95 days of the year 2020. I've just taken the stats that he shared, and I want you to see it. This is the first 95 days. This would have been the first week of April. COVID had 60,000 deaths. This is the first 95 days of 2020. But notice with me, at the same exact period of time, 80,000 mothers died giving childbirth. 126,000 people died with seasonal flu. Malaria took out 254,000. Suicide, 280,000. Accidents, 350,000. HIV or AIDS took out 435,000. Cancer took out 2,125,000. And infectious diseases took out another 2,484,000, and 4,475,000 others died from heart disease. 60,000 doesn't seem like a very big figure when you put it in perspective. You say, well, what was number one? Well, the number one killer in the world is abortion. In the first 95 days, 11,082,000 babies were aborted. So we're led to believe that COVID-19 is a pandemic and that, oh my, we are going to have millions of people dead. I think our president was sucker punched. I think the planners behind all of this was ready to go. And he was told that maybe 2 million of his people might die. And he made wise decisions based on the information given to him. But as time has unfolded, we have discovered that true science doesn't operate by models. True science operates by data. And what we are looking at on this chart is true data. And 60,000 deaths, though every death is a tragedy, but it's a part of life in this world. People die. We are born, we live, we die, and it'll continue until time ceases. The only people that escape the death is those of us that will be present at the rapture. And so the 60,000 is the number in 95 days, the first 95 days. It pales in any comparison to the list of people who also died at the same time. The question begs to be answered. Why are they signing off on all the death certificates of everybody that's dying right now, in America in particular, and it's being written on their death certificate, COVID-19? Because the World Health Organization and the CDC sent out to all of the doctors in America a 7-page layout of how to classify it, and that anybody who dies, you don't have to test them, just write it down, COVID. So out of the 60,000 at this time, I wonder how many really died of it. By the way, nobody dies of the virus. They die of the complications that the greater majority of them had before they got this. I'll give you some more facts here in just a moment. What I want to do in this first session is to understand, is this really what it's being made out to be? And so doctors are complaining all the time. Why do I want to write down he died or she died of COVID-19 when we knew he had Alzheimer's, and as a result he had failed to swallow? He died because he suffocated on his own food, but yet we have to tell it was COVID-19. Tests have been done after brought to mortuaries. Families have sued to have their loved one to be examined by the doctors, only to discover they really did not have COVID-19. But you see, if you pad the numbers, and if you put them on a ventilator, you'll get another $39,000 for your hospital. Wow. By the way, the World Health Organization sent out the information of how to put a person on a ventilator, as if a doctor didn't already know. And this particular doctor that you're looking at his chart here, Pastor Michael Creer, he said he has put over 12,000 people on a ventilator, helped them stay alive while they were in surgery. He said you never, ever put a person in the prone position on a ventilator, because that puts the weight of their body on the top of their lungs, and you could blow out their lungs and they could die of an infection. Yet that's the World Health recommendations of how to use a ventilator for COVID-19. So that's why I said the name of this series, is it really a pandemic? Is it only pandemonium, or maybe there's a plan? This dear doctor also gave this fact. Think of this. About 7,775,510 people on planet Earth. If 10% of them, that would be 777,551,000. 1% of the world's population would be 77,755,100. 0.1% would be 7,775,510. Hey, 1/100th of 1% of the world's population would be 777,551. 1/1000th of a percent would be 77,755. Wait a minute. I thought this was a pandemic in the world. I thought millions and millions are going to die from this. And I don't underestimate, and I'm not making light of any death. It's a tragedy. but it's a part of humanity. But if you just simply look at it, you are talking about this. Watch closely with me. Of all those that have been tested, that are tested as positive, and by the way, it's already been demonstrated, if you've had a flu shot in the last decade, within the last 10 years, if you've had a flu shot, 9 times out of 10, you're going to test positive. That should tell us a little about vaccines, because vaccines are blending animal DNA with human DNA. And so if you've had a flu shot in the last 10 years, you probably will test positive for COVID-19. But what you need to understand, 50% of the people that test positive are asymptomatic. That means they didn't even know they had it. They've not had the first symptom. They've not had the first runny nose. They've not had the first problem. Didn't know they had it until they were tested. 40% will only have a mild symptom that'll last a day or two. They thought, all I had was just a little cold. My nose ran for a day or so. Or I had a little chill in the middle of the night, but I feel okay now. Only 10% who test positive will need any medical assistance. And out of that, only 2 people, or 2%, end up in the ICU. Wow. I thought we needed new hospitals built. I thought we needed millions of ventilators. I thought we were going to need all of this stuff. Wait a minute. You see, real data is what scientists use. But politicians, with a plan, use models. Now they keep backing their models back. They need to scrap their models, and they need to do something else that we'll see in the second session. They need to do something much more drastic. They need a change of some advisors for our president. Let me give you this thought. As a result of what we look at, only 1.0007% of the people die. Out of all those that were tested positive, only 0.07% of them die. Hey, let's put that in perspective. Out of 10 million, 9,999,983 will survive. Only 7 will die. Is that a pandemic? What has created such a pandemonium and fear in our world? Must be more to the story. The real question is, why all of the panic? Man, I love my Bible, and I know you do too. The Bible says in 2 Timothy 1:7, he says, "For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind." We need to, man, I look around and I see the people driving down the road with their masks on. I guess they're going to infect themselves in their car. I don't know. You see the fear everywhere you go, the panic that was out there. You couldn't buy a roll of toilet paper. Now the price of toilet paper is shooting through the roof because the Chinese that own the majority of the paper mills in America are shutting them down. Oh, well, I wonder why. We'll see. We'll talk about that in the next session. But God gave the believer a sound mind. And I'm telling you, the Christian that walks with the Lord is not walking in fear. We're not concerned about this. Man, our world would not be where they are if the media wasn't pushing all of this. That's where the pandemic is. You see, could it be that this is an end-time birth pain? Could this be an end-time birth pain? Hey, the Lord, as we said a while ago, he gave 5 things there in Luke's account of the Olivet Discourse, 5 things that are signs or birth pains leading to the tribulation days. Could this be another one of those birth pains? Here's what Paul wrote to the church at Thessalonica in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 3. For when they say, peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, notice the wording, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. What is the travail of a woman? We call it birth pains. And somewhere along in her pregnancy, if things have gone normal, she's maybe in her 8th month, 7th, 8th month, somewhere along in there, and all of a sudden one day she said, ooh, that's a different feeling. Anyway, that's what my wife told me 5 times, because we have 5 children. And then it won't be long until another birth pain. And with every succeeding birth pain, they get a little bit more severe and last a little longer, until they get so severe and so close together that the birth takes place. The picture that the Bible gives us prophetically of the end time signs, not for the rapture, but for the approaching day of the tribulation period, is like that. You'll have one, and then it settles down. Then you have another, and it settles down until they get greater in intensity and closer in frequency. I believe this is another birth pain, bringing us closer to the days of a one-world government, a one-world situation. All of that for the tribulation period. I'm convinced from the Bible that there will be a rapture of the believer of God before the days of the tribulation began. You say, well, these must be part of those pestilences that's mentioned over in the 6th, 7th, and 8th verses of chapter 6 of Revelation. Oh, no. This is a precursor of much, much worse things to come. We're not in the tribulation days, but we're seeing the indications of the precursors of what is coming. Why is the entire world under quarantine? Hey, quarantine is where you put the sick person aside. The Bible is very clear on these standards. In the Old Testament and in Jesus' day, hey, you remember he had some lepers that he healed? Hey, you remember in the Old Testament, the requirement for a leper was to separate himself. And if you, a clean or a healthy person, was beginning to get too close to him, he was responsible under his quarantine situation. Unclean, unclean, stay back, don't get near me. What we have done is quarantine the healthy. Let me tell you what it does. If you are not breathing and living in the environment around you, if you're sterilized, hey, do we take a baby and put that baby that's just born in a plastic bubble so that he won't get any disease? You see, for the first 6 months, that newborn baby doesn't have an immune system. How does he develop an immune system? By breathing the atmosphere and the germs. How does a child develop in his immune system? Hey, kids will eat dirt. They do all kinds of things. And you're all the time, oh, Lord, don't put that in your mouth. All of that is how our bodies build an immune system. So we're under quarantine so that we can live in a sterile environment. What will happen in 3 or 4 months if people live that way? And then they're let loose, and the cool weather comes back, and the virus has increased in strength. You talk about a pandemic in the making. Who put them under quarantine? I think it's pretty obvious what's going on. So what happens is we build our immune system. It's called herd immunity. And the more we take in these things, the more our body builds its own immune system against that. Yet here we are doing just the opposite. Who said we ought to do that? believe it may be the World Health Organization. Oh my. The World Health Organization. Oh, notice, Dr. Michael Ryan, who attended an event called the Coronavirus Victims. He says, here's what we need to do. We need to be able to go into their homes and forcibly take them out of their homes. Oh. That sounds pretty radical for something that's not even half as deadly as the seasonal flu. Wow. Hey, here in California, a church was live streaming. Nobody's in the building but their band or their musical people, and they're doing some music, getting ready for their preacher to bring a message, and they've been banned. It's illegal to do that. But let's keep our abortion stations open. We want to kill more and more of those unborn babies. We don't want you encouraging anybody by live streaming some music and preaching. Seems like more than just a pandemic to me. Well, here's a fella that's the governor of California. Here's what he said just a couple of days ago, or even yesterday, 2 days ago. He said, we're going to start back the schools and child care and schools in just weeks, not months. But he said, we're going to keep churches closed a little longer. Wait a minute. You got the picture? Hey, they're flocking to the beaches in California. Hey, by the way, did you know the more of the heat and the more of the sun you get, the less effect the COVID-19 has on you? Matter of fact, it can't survive the heat. So thousands are flocking to the beach, and here's a police officer telling this 93-year-old couple, hey, you can't be out here. Hey, how about the reports where they arrested a woman in front of her children, setting just them in the city park? Or how about a man who was arrested in front of his wife and children because only he and his wife and 2 children are on the baseball field throwing the ball? Does that sound like anybody that really cares about a pandemic, or is there a plan? Notice the picture. This is in Hong Kong. Walking around under plastic. These people are in total fear. And they've only had 4 deaths in 4 months. You see, somebody's figured out if we can create enough fear, people to do anything to stay alive. We'll see that in our next session, how important that is. Yesterday, Pope Francis said, obedience to state lockdowns. What characters are involved? The question is this: is there someone or some movement behind all this panic? Is there somebody controlling the strings? Is it a natural germ or a virus? Or is it maybe bioterrorism? Let me show you something. AIDS, SARS, Zika, Ebola, and I didn't have it on this particular one, but coronavirus. Let me ask you a question. Why are they patented in the patent office? Hey, coronavirus has 17 different people holding different forms of patents. And the present one that is now unleashed on the world, you know who owns the patent? The World Health Organization. You see, they say, hey, we've got to have these so we can study how to make a virus or a vaccine for the virus. Just this week, Microsoft got them a new patent. They got them a patent, one to implement a chip connected to the cloud computer system with biometric dating. It's called Human Implantable Quantum Dot Microneedle Vaccine. Wow. Look at the numbers. Let me back up a moment. Well, it don't show here. Yeah, see it? WO2020 060606. You say that's a coincidence. I don't think there's any such thing as coincidence. I'm telling you, there are nefarious people, there are multi-billionaires, there are political leaders who would not let anything like a devastation like this pandemic go to waste. Oh no. We'll come back to some of those individuals in our next session. Where do scientists work to research vaccines? Well, they do it in biosafety laboratories. They're called BSL, either 1, 2, 3, or 4. You know, if you get your blood drawn, a BSL 1 or 2 laboratory test your blood. But a BSL 3 or a 4 is where they do work on different areas of virology, of things of the nature that we're talking about. According to the United States government, back as far as 2007, we have hundreds, at least 13, almost 1,400, and probably more than that, laboratories in America. But we only have 15 of them that are BSL-4. That's where biological weaponry is developed. And but about 4 years ago or so, 5 years ago, in the National Institute of Health, their BSL-4 laboratory in Bethesda, Maryland, because of the laws that we operate by in America, the research that was being done on the coronavirus was crossing a line with our rules and regulations. So they closed it down, and they ejected the lady, a Chinese lady that was running it. They sent her out of our country, and she went back to her place in Wuhan Institute of Virology, another BSL-4 laboratory. Oh, now it's been discovered that Dr. Fauci and the Obama administration gave Wuhan, along with her, $3.7 million to continue the research. That would have been a violation in America. Ooh. Sounds a little shady to me. Folks, listen. The panic over COVID-19 is manufactured. Not only is the virus manufactured, but the panic is manufactured. And the globalist elites of the world, all working together, they want to see how far they can get their people to follow them. At the same time, promising safety while removing their freedoms. We'll pick it up here in our second session, and we'll be looking at some various individuals. And I think you'll see it's more than a pandemic. It's more than pandemonium. It truly is a grand plan. Thank you.
Thank you for watching this edition of the Issachar Report, encouraging and equipping.
It's after 7. Till next week. Finish number 2.